Hello, welcome to my video. I'm going to be talking about liminal spaces. I first came across the concept of liminal spaces through meme accounts, of course, and since then they have been popping up everywhere. The word liminal comes from the Latin limen, which means threshold. To be in a liminal space means to be on the precipice of something new but not quite there yet. You can be in a liminal space metaphorically, physically, or emotionally. Since there is an aesthetic for pretty much every kind of thing on the internet these days, there is of course a liminal space aesthetic. I went down the unfortunate rabbit hole of aesthetics wiki, which I don't advise because it's a mind-boggling place, but they do have a good description of what the liminal space aesthetic entails. The liminal space aesthetic was allegedly born in 2019 when a 4chan user asked for people to post disquieting images that just felt a bit off. The liminal space aesthetic refers to the unique feeling of eeriness, nostalgia, or apprehension that people report when presented with specific places outside of their usual context. When it comes to liminal aesthetics, the aspect of feeling is key. An empty stairwell or hospital corridor might look sinister because usually these places are brimming with life and movement. The absence of any kind of dynamism creates an otherworldly and forlorn atmosphere. Liminal space aesthetics have expanded in their scope to include images of places that are simply nostalgic, dreamlike, or uncanny in their nature, to the point where the only remaining characteristic across the images is the striking absence of people. Although these images are incorporated as part of the liminal space aesthetic, they are not considered to be liminal spaces themselves. While some people argue that this diversity waters down the definition of liminal spaces, old rooms feel liminal to me because they represent an era that is on the verge of decay or is being phased out. Liminal space aesthetics have been a driving force behind a lot of new creative work in what I can only describe as the liminal space boom. All you need to do is take one glance at a Google Trends report in order to see just how much the interest in liminal spaces has grown since 2020. Of course, in response to this sudden appetite for liminal spaces, there has been a surge in liminal space photography. Many photographers are going out of their way to capture and edit images in the hopes that they might possess this mysterious quality that will render the images liminal. In terms of gaming, liminal spaces have always been prevalent within games. However, more recently, many games are being designed with liminal spaces as a core focus. Glitch Hikers: The Spaces in Between is a game that was released in March 2020 and offers a space for gamers to reflect on the state of the world and themselves. The concept of liminal spaces within the game is super prevalent and is used to give players an enhanced mythical or ethereal feeling. Liminal Dreams is another game that I came across, which was first created in December 2021 and is still being worked on. It's an independent game. I sat down and watched some of the gameplay and it's like the most relaxing thing ever. There's been a huge increase in meme accounts related to liminal spaces and liminal space aesthetics. They're either creepy or dreamlike in their nature. Often the memes are digitally manipulated and edited to enhance this dreamlike or eerie feeling. They're really effective at this, and I follow many of these accounts because they serve kind of like a digital respite on my feed. NFTs. Of course, there has been a collection of NFTs that have been sold and have been influenced by liminal spaces. In April of 2022, artist and designer Camilla Samantri sold her 5-piece NFT collection titled The Dream State, based around her vision for a utopian society and represented through liminal spaces. Liminal spaces are also associated with certain genres of music, with tons of liminal space playlists popping up. It's become increasingly apparent that liminal spaces are almost like a fully immersive concept. Common thread across all of this artistic output is the dreamlike element. Many people describe how liminal spaces show up in their dreams. This is super interesting when you consider the concept of liminal dreaming. Liminal dreaming is a term coined by Jennifer Dumpert. It is less of a mouthful than the two scientific terms for the two brain states on either edge of sleep. Hypnagogia, which literally means going towards Hypnos, the Greek god of sleep, and its early morning mirror state, hypnopompia. Liminal dreaming is different to lucid dreaming, which means becoming aware so that you can direct your brain to perform its stories however you'd like. Lucid dreaming can take an age to master, even with the help of psychoactive substances. Liminal dreaming is simply about those moments where you float out of and back into consciousness, and trying to prolong that wild brain state for as long as possible. If lucid dreaming is the equivalent of wearing a full-body virtual reality suit, then liminal dreaming is to lucid dreaming what mobile gaming is to full-body VR. It may not last as long or be quite as involved, but it's easier to find and accessible to all. Salvador Dali, the master of surrealism, employed liminal dreaming as part of his creative process. Take this image for example. Dali is slouching in his chair. In his right hand he holds a key. Beneath his hand is an upside down plate. Once he falls into a deep sleep, his hand releases the key and it clangs onto the plate. This awakes the painter with a start and he's refreshed and ready to get weird. Dali's famous slumber with a key technique is a very brief nap, less than a quarter of a second long. It's used to channel the fluid state between wake and sleep, where perceptions and sensations of the day resurface in the form of hypnagogic images. Dali prescribed this afternoon slumber to fellow painters as it provides both visual inspiration and well-needed rest. It's thought to be a powerful creative tool because the imagery is autonomous, being experienced rather than thought up, and its output is often described as surreal. The science behind this aspect of sleep is limited, but we do know that it looks really weird on an EEG monitor. All other kinds of brain states, whether waking or sleeping, steady down eventually so that they resemble a steady wave. The liminal dream state, however, jumps around like static. Liminal dreaming is somewhere where we can tap into that creative intelligence that Napoleon Hill describes as a sixth sense. Infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The sixth sense is that proportion of the subconscious mind which has been referred to as creative imagination, and it is exactly the kind of quality that is reflected in many of the liminal space images. The most interesting thing about liminal dreaming is that it's not like regular dreaming. There's no narrative and there's no you. Liminal dreaming is egoless. You might experience flashes of light and colour, and all kinds of images might pop up, too fast to pin down. There's a drowsy sense of being pleasantly drugged, both awake and asleep at the same time. You can hear what's going on in the world, but you're less inclined to care. In his book Liminal Thinking, David Gray refers to the supraliminal as influencing conscious thought, liminal, a transitory state, and subliminal, the catalyst for unconscious thought. In this context, liminality is the threshold where you move from being on autopilot to being consciously aware. Gray identifies this as the state where opportunity to make behavioural changes presents itself. The increase in interest in liminal spaces has coincided with COVID lockdowns and the Great Resignation, both events which may have made people feel like they are in a liminal space personally, as they transition into a new job or start working back in the office again. And while COVID has brought these images back into the public's realm of consciousness, liminal images represent kind of the playground of our minds, a dreamlike state that we might link with creation. And to me, the liminal space images are inviting because they resemble a place where ego ceases to exist. I have seen this interest in liminal spaces compared to an acknowledgement of our own mortality. Overall, I think there's so many layers to liminal spaces as a concept, and I think thousands of people could make a video on liminal spaces and all have a unique take. The link between liminal dreaming and the creative process to all of this new art surrounding liminal spaces was something that I felt compelled to talk about. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for watching.